addition, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll call for the prayer and invocation, and following that, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And Mayor, I'm going to ask you if you would to do the prayer for us, and then we'll be going into the pledge, okay?
Okay, thank you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the blessings of your love. We thank you for all the beauty and splendor as celebrated as we prepare to celebrate the birth of your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you for the Thanksgiving that we have had the opportunity to enjoy. We thank you for community and friends who work together. We ask that you bless, continue to bless this community, bless our constituents, bless this board as we prepare to deal with and make decisions that will affect your people. May we continue to be compassionate and keep us in your care. Be with us throughout this meeting. Bless this city, bless those we serve, and we thank you for the opportunity to serve. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for being here. We'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our visitors. We especially note that our attorney's bride, Mrs. Bentley, is with us this evening. We welcome you and wish you the joyous of holiday seasons, and thank you for allowing us to just take him away whenever we need him. Okay, thank you so much. We'd also like to thank Mr. Williams for videotaping, and Dan and Pat, we thank you for being here this evening as well. And thanks to each of you for being on the board this evening. We get this work done, and we'll have another new year coming. And thank you so much for serving. I'm going to call now for the approval of the minutes. We have several work sessions and regular meetings. So I'm going to call for the work session meeting of October 7th, meeting of October 13th, October 24th, and November 4th. What is your pleasure? Do we have any questions regarding the minutes of each of those sessions?
Taking them all in at the same time.
You can take them however you need to.
I move approval of all the minutes from the work sessions that we've had.
Second the motion. All right. You've heard the motion and the second. I call for any questions or any corrections or additions or deletions that we may have at this time.
And I think you were including the regular meetings as well as the work session.
All right. No questions? All right. Then I call for your vote. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by show of hands. Opposes? None. It's unanimously carried. Thank you. We call on our general manager at this time to apprise us of the activity reports of October and November.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening.
Good evening.
Please see attached activity reports for October and November of 2014, all detailed for your approval. Any comments, questions? Nothing out of the ordinary in there that I can point out to you. It's just been a very busy couple of months working on our holiday festivities and activities, and I believe everything turned out beautiful downtown. We're glad to be of assistance on that to the city.
Do we have any questions from the board for either of the reports from the departments? Any comments regarding any of the reports? Everybody's happy? All right, then we'll accept your reports unless there's a need for additional questions or comments. We will accept your reports as information, and thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll call now for the year-to-date August and September budget and financial review, if you'll address that for us.
Madam Chair, right behind the activity reports, there are 2 year-to-date financial reports. One of them says year-to-date August 2014. The next one is September 2014, which is our end of our fiscal year. I just wanted to point out to Commission that these budget numbers were incredible. If you look at our total budget of $22.2 million, our numbers were right on track. And if you continue down to look at total expenses, we were budgeted to spend $22.7 million, where we were down 6%, and we were 6% under budget at $21.4 million. So congratulations to our staff and our employees for doing their due diligence. And it turned out to be a great year. And Pat, thanks for all your help on that.
Are there any questions regarding the budget report? All right, then we will accept this information. Thank you so much for a job well done, both to Pat and to you as general manager and to all of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving to our next agenda item is old business. We have no old business, so we'll move right, unless there's some from the floor, we'll move right into our new business. And the first item on the new business is the equipment bid and approvals. We have several of them in our packet. The first one, Dan, you want to offer it to us?
Madam Chair, thank you. If I may, as discussed and reviewed in the work session of last week, we went through the formal bidding procedures last October. We did our advertisements and our announcements. We had a bid opening October 29th at the Utility Commission. This is for a much needed bucket truck. What we came up with, what we're recommending to Commission is the bottom line item on that first page. It's a Terex bucket truck for $172,535. We're asking Commission to consider that approval. The next item was a 2015 Ford F-150, apparent low bidder. We're asking Commission to consider for Riverside Ford for $20,560.28. Again, apparent low bidder. Next item is for our water activities department. That's one Sea Snake digital reporting monitor with 2 batteries and a charger and a battery adapter. Apparent low bidder is at the bottom of the sheet, P&H Supply for $3,810. The next item is also part of this same widget, if you will. It's a quantity of 1 rigid Sea Snake standard camera, 200-foot self-leveling color reel, recommended for Commission approval, also with P&H Supply out of Warrenton for $6,140. And those are the items that are asking for bid consideration and approval, Madam Chair.
All right. You've heard the offers for bid approval. Do we have any questions?
Are we asked to take these separately or all together?
I think you could do them all together. They've been explained.
All right.
Sure.
Okay. Then I call for a motion.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, given the fact that we discussed these in the work session and had our questions answered, and I move that we accept
All right, it's been properly motioned by Commissioner Dankel and seconded by Commissioner Johnson that we will accept all of the motions with clear understanding of what they're for and approval. All those in favor, let it be known by show of hands. Opposers, the same sign. Unanimously carried. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission.
All right. Our next item is the ComSouth pole attachment agreement approval. You want to highlight
Thank you,
that for
Madam
us?
Chair. We are all about capturing revenue in the utility business, and we have extensive infrastructure that's in the field that from time to time we do rent pole space to AT&T, to ComSouth, to various other entities, as every utility does across the country. It's industry standard. We have AT&T pole agreement in place. We have not had one with ComSouth attached for your approval, and signature is a joint use, a pole attachment agreement between the Utility Commission and ComSouth. There's some bullet points on the following page as we discussed in the work session. Starting with calendar year 2015 and then showing incrementals with 2016. Following with that, we'll be using the Handy Whitman Index Guide for the next few years. It's an industry standard agreement. It's in our best interest. There's no question about it. And again, it is for commission consideration and approval, and recommend that we enter into this agreement with ComSouth.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I so move.
All right. We have a motion on the floor that we will enter into this agreement. May I get a second? All right, it's been properly moved by Commissioner Johnson and seconded by Commissioner Hunnicutt that we will enter into the pole attachment agreement with ComSouth as presented. Are there any further questions? If not, then I call for a vote. All those in favor, let it be known by show of hands. All right, it's unanimously carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
calling
Madam
in
Chair.
for-
That's in our best interest.
Thank you for the work done on that. Our next agenda item is the assigned Sunmark banknote, the disposition of that note with the DDA.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
we've had considerable conversation about this in past work sessions and in discussion with our finance manager during the day today, and discussions with our auditor and further discussions with our independent auditor. Long story short, the Utility Commission is of the opinion that that note can stay with the Utility Commission, and we do have some time left before the end of September, our fiscal year, to do something with it, and hopefully some good will come out of it. We'll be more than happy to work with the DDA and the city to continue doing what the DDA said that they would do. Our recommendation to commission, if they choose to do so, is we'll leave the note with the Utility Commission at this time.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of the general manager to us regarding that note. Any, Pat?
The recommendation, I believe, is to not assign the note to the city, to retain the Utility Commission's interest in the note, and to attempt future collection of the note when properties are sold. We would also like your approval to not show the note on our balance sheet as of September 30th, 2014. That has no effect whatsoever on the collection attempts of the note. We're just not going to show it as a note receivable on our balance sheet as of September the 30th from the Downtown Development Authority, which is a component unit of the city of Fort Valley. And we're asking you to approve all of that.
All right, Bob, you have a question?
Do you plan to write it off, Pat?
Yeah, that was my question.
Yes.
This fiscal year?
Yes, by not showing it on the balance sheet, in effect, it would be written off. That doesn't affect the status of the note, it doesn't affect the collectability of the note, it doesn't change the relationship between the Utility Commission and the Downtown Development Authority. As we receive collections in future years, those payments would be considered revenue, income. Okay. We're just not going to show it as an asset on the balance sheet as of September of 2014. The other item that you will probably be interested in, and I had a lengthy discussion with Paul Glick this morning, and then the two of us had a lengthy discussion with Daniel George. The recommendation is to, when we write off the note and we don't carry it on the balance sheet, the recommendation from all three of us is to not show it as a bad debt, but to show it as the type of transaction it would have been had we paid the fees 5 or 6 years ago when we were originally asked to help with the architectural fees for the building. So we're not going to show it as a bad debt. We're basically going to show it as a transfer to the Downtown Development Authority.
Madam Chair, I think we should have one more opinion from Attorney Bentley before we make a decision on that, if he would like to opine on this.
I'm fine with all of this transaction with the exception of determining or not showing it on the balance sheet, because I'm unaware of what efforts we're going to make to collect this money ultimately from the DDA. And I'm also a little bit concerned that if it's written off and there are no efforts to collect it, what that will do to the DDA in terms of its ability to obtain financing in the future. If it goes on the DDA as essentially a bad debt, the DDA is in the business of borrowing money and obtaining bond financing. With that mark on them, I don't know at this time what their financing capabilities would be. So I'd like for you to at least table that little bit, unless it's a compelling reason to do it before 12/31, until you and I have had a chance to talk about it, and I've had a chance to talk to the city attorney about it.
There is a compelling reason to do it because our fiscal year ends September 30th, and the books have been closed, and Paul Glick is here, and we're in the process of compiling our financial statements, and the auditors are coming in January. Okay? It is my professional opinion, and I've discussed the matter with Paul Glick and with our auditor, Daniel George. Based upon the facts and circumstances that I know, following generally accepted accounting principles, it would be inappropriate to show that note at face value of $135,000 on our balance sheet. If you want to show it on our balance sheet, then my recommendation is that we set up an allowance for bad debts for the same amount of money and disclose that appropriately in the notes to the financial statements. Now, that's my professional opinion. That is our financial advisor's professional opinion, and that is our outside auditor's professional opinion.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Joel was not present in our work session the other day when we had a lengthy discussion about this. And I asked the question, if we retained the note or if we gave it, transferred it to the city, we are of the opinion that we're not going to get paid, period. I think we all sort of reached that consensus. So it didn't matter where the note, in our ignorance, it didn't make any difference where the note was.
And I expressed some concerns and some feelings that I have. I have one fairly close friend on that board. And they don't have the money. I think we're all aware of that. But I think if they ever come into the money, I'm 100% convinced that those funds would go to reduce this debt. And I think the commission sort of agreed with that consensus. So I don't think you were privy to that information. So, and I don't know whether that changes your opinion or not. But
I don't have an issue with what the utility commission does with it. From a financial standpoint, from the accounting standpoint, I'm not an accountant, and I have to rely on Pat's opinion on that. I have two issues. One, what is it going to do to me if I had to attempt to collect it from a discovery standpoint? What is the status of that as far as the utility commission? And number two, is it discoverable or is it pertinent information on the city's balance sheet with the DDA in the event that the DDA attempts to obtain financing and it has a debt that it lawfully is required to pay, which has been written off by the holder of the note. I'm asking for you to at least consider the impact that might have on the DDA. As far as the utility commission, I have no problem with the actions that they're taking, and the DDA may not be terribly concerned with that issue, but it would be something you should at least be cognizant of before you address it in the fashion we address it. I think it's in the utility commission's best interest to do what Patrick asked you to do, but it will make it certainly something that's going to show up on our cap room, and as a result, it has to impact the DDA. But that's just the way it is.
Let me address one issue.
Pat?
From a practical standpoint, we're simply not showing an asset on the balance sheet of $135,000. Right? That's basically what we're doing. We're not necessarily writing it off and sending it anywhere. Okay? The note is in a file in my office. And just like we have utility customers who leave and don't pay their bill and they have a bad debt, we write those bad debts off. Those bad debts are not on our balance sheet either. They are kept on a the most likely reason is they want utility service turned on somewhere in Fort Valley. They clear up the bad debt, we pick up the income, and we move on. We're going to treat it, we're not going to show it in our P&L statement as a bad debt. We're going to show it as a transfer to the Downtown Development Authority, a component unit of the city of Fort Valley. So it's not going to show up anywhere as a bad debt. It's just not going to be on our balance sheet. And Bob, if you are correct, and if in the future they make payments, no legal action would be taken whatsoever. The only time it would be put into collection and legal action would be taken is at some point way off in the future when you as a body decide that no payments have been made, enough is enough, let's forget it, or let's take whatever legal action that can be taken and attempt to collect it in the courts. And that decision's not being made tonight. It's just whether or not we show it on the balance sheet as an asset that is worth $135,000. That's it. And we had a question, Bob.
No, I have a statement, Madam Chair. I think if it's considered that this will be written off, we probably will never get that collected. I mean, that's one of the things that the Utilities Commission should say among themselves. But now, I mean, horses out of the stable now. But if it's considered that it will be written off, you may not ever get paid back. As Bob said, we want them to understand that we want to be paid the debt that they owe. And I think it's fair to consider that, even though we all have friends on that board, but they owe the debt. And I think we probably should think in those regards.
So with,
Go ahead.
the
Yes.
question. So given what the mayor has just said, which makes sense to me, is that in any way conflicting anything that you recommended as the accountant?
Yes. I'm not recommending that you write it off, okay? And I'm not recommending that you take legal action against the Downtown Development Authority. I'm simply recommending that we do not put the $135,000 on the balance sheet. That's all I'm asking you to do. If you decide to put the $135,000 on the balance sheet, then I'm going to ask you to allow me to make an allowance against that $135,000, so that the net effect of it is it shows up as zero on the balance sheet. It should not be disclosed as an asset on the balance sheet for $135,000. That's all I'm asking you to do.
All right. Any recommendations?
I still think it's murky. I mean, are we gonna have, as far as our balance sheet goes, is there a note in there somewhere that refers to this folder in your office?
Yes, there would be footnote disclosure. Actually, if you put it on the balance sheet and then set up an allowance so that the net effect is zero, there would be disclosure that you took action to do that in the notes to the financial statements. If you take action simply to not show it on the balance sheet and to treat it as a transfer to the Downtown Development Authority, then there would be no reason to have any further disclosure of that in the notes to the financial statements. You're not showing it as an asset, and in the P&L you're showing it as a transfer to the Downtown Development Authority.
See, Pat, that's precisely the issue that I have, is that we have not, or to my knowledge, the Utility Commission has not made an affirmative decision to make that transfer to the DDA. You know, that is not a bad debt in the sense of someone's not paid a utility bill. This is an actual note that has been assigned to the Utility Commission that the Utility Commission had to pay a significant amount of money for to obtain, to purchase. So of the two options you described, I would prefer that you show it, but then have the countervailing.
When you do the countervailing entry on the balance sheet, you still have to put the debit somewhere.
Right.
So the debit goes to either bad debts, which I don't believe it is a bad debt. I truly think the nature of the transaction is a real transfer to the Downtown Development Authority for the purpose of paying the architectural fees. So if we show it on the balance sheet, $135,000 note, less allowance, minus $135, net of zero, there will still be an entry in the P&L statement for transfer to the Downtown Development Authority, $135,000.
Right, Commissioner Dankel.
If we make a transfer to the city, we have never expected the city to pay that transfer back. That's a transfer. That's almost like a gift.
Well, you're not saying to the city, you're saying to the DDA.
I know that, but what I'm saying is it's the same thing in my mind as a transfer to the city would be. We don't expect the city to repay a transfer, nor should we require the DDA to repay a transfer in my mind. Now, maybe my thinking isn't correct, but I would think that it's not a transfer, it's a
I somewhat agree, and unless there is a reason why we don't put it in bad debts that I haven't heard, I don't know why we don't put it in bad debts, because that's what it is.
If that's your desire, if it is your desire to not show it on the balance sheet and treat it as a bad debt instead of a transfer to the city, that's fine. My goal, my purpose, my professional opinion is that the $135,000 should not be presented in our balance sheet, okay? And we have a financial consultant and our independent auditor, Danielle George. All three of us are in agreement. Knowing the facts and circumstances, we are 6 months down the road. The $135,000 should not be on the balance sheet. Now, whether we treat it as a bad debt in the P&L statement or whether we treat it as a transfer to the Downtown Development Authority, we can put it either place. From the standpoint of the effect that $135,000 is going to have on our financial statements, the way we do the financial statements, the bottom line is going to be the same, okay? Because that is an administrative expense, and the administrative expense is allocated out to electric, water, sewer, gas, and telecom based upon customers. So from the bottom line, as long as it hits the P&L statement, and as long as it's not shown on the balance sheet, then we've got good GAAP, okay?
Well, I think, Pat, you've hit on a point that the Utility Commission should think about. The reason I believe that you would consider it non-performing or you consider it a non-asset is the Utility Commission has not made an affirmative effort to require the DDA to put this note on a performing basis. What I mean is that we've approached the DDA in our meeting and said, look, we would like for you to sell property to pay us back. We have the right and authority under the terms and conditions of that note to require them to renew the note at whatever terms we've mutually negotiated. As Pat pointed out, interest is accruing right now. Late fees are accruing right now. This note is due and payable. I don't know that it technically qualifies as a bad debt because we have not demanded for immediate payment, nor have we demanded that they re-enter into the note to carry it forward. So,
well, let me get y'all to consider one other thing. The Utility Commission directed Dan and I to swap checks.
and the city would not agree to do that.
And the city would not.
A DDA, excuse me.
The DDA did not agree to do that, all right? I mean, I had a meeting in my office with Bobby Barnes, and I explained the entire situation to him. And I said, Bobby, please, I've been directed by the Utility Commission to give you this $8,250 check, and would you please give me your word that you will write us a check back for the $8,250 to apply against the balance of the $135,000. And his answer was that in my office he didn't have the authority to make that decision. All right? And then the following morning, I was directed by Dan to deliver that check to Bobby Barnes by noon, and I did. We've got this letter here. All right, it's in your packet. Nothing's happening, and time is of the essence. We need to close our books. If you want to show it on the balance sheet, fine. There will be full disclosure in the notes to the financial statements as to the nature of the $135,000. If that's what you want to do, fine. I'll just have to make a full disclosure of all the facts and circumstances in the notes to the financial statements. Now, I understand that this is a very messy situation, but 3 people are telling you in their professional judgment from a generally accepted accounting principles standpoint and from a GASB standpoint, we shouldn't put that in the balance sheet. We should put it in the PL statement and move on and attempt collection from the Downtown Development Authority. No matter what you decide to do tonight, we still have the note that is assigned to us, and we have all the rights and privileges, and they still have all the obligations of the note.
Has anyone done anything other than that day you met with Bobby and Dan in the office to collect this note from where you sit?
We've not required them to.
Okay.
We've not required them to put it on a performing basis.
We probably need to get it on a performing basis. If they have the capacity to pay, then we need to get it on a performing basis. We can't just sit 6 months longer. We have a note here that says that they're going to do certain things, and we have given them sufficient time to do certain things. We need to ask them to start performing. And if they don't perform, then do we have the capacity to start performing? We need to consider that as well.
Can we require them to?
We can't require them to, that's what I'm asking. What would we need to do? Because this has been long enough, and there are sufficient assets to have collected and paid with or without all of these steps that they have outlined in this letter. You know, there's a market value that we could ask for that would pay the note. We don't have to have an appraisal.
They've had appraisals of 3 properties. I just don't know what their appraisals had.
I'm confused. Are you suggesting we take less than $130,000?
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right.
I'm suggesting we take steps to get our bill paid. I think that we've given them sufficient time to do whatever they need to do to align themselves to start performing on this legitimate note. And so it's time they start performing. We've given, we've not said anything else since the day you delivered that check. But the time has come that we need to know. And at the time the note was received by us, there were properties that could have been sold then. We didn't have to have an appraisal. They had to have an appraisal.
That being the case.
The market value is good.
Dolly, that
Yes,
being the case, would you entertain a motion to instruct me to keep the note on the balance sheet and to make the necessary disclosures in the notes to the financial statements? And we'll move on.
I have to get permission from the attorney and the board to do that. Now, make it clear to us again, what would you suggest? But before you do that,
I have one more
he has a
question.
question.
Has the commission honored its obligation, not obligation, its commitment to the DDA as we agreed to in last year's budget?
Yes.
Every month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was the check swatting.
Yeah. The last payment was the
Yeah,
check
that
swap.
check.
Uh,
So we fulfilled
and when was that? I mean,
The
when?
last week in September.
Okay. And that obligation, commitment, whatever you want to call it, would have ended when?
September
With our
30th.
budget year?
September 30th,
Okay.
2014.
But also keep in mind that the city has, because of the transaction that the Utility Commission made, the city has also given in their budget
Right.
the amount that I think your note was supposed to have been paid from. They hadn't given necessarily cash because you hadn't transferred it to us. But they have a budgeted amount of an extra $35,000 in there, or $30,000, whatever that was that you budgeted for. They already have that in their new budget. So
Well,
I didn't.
Okay.
one more quick comment, and
All
I'll
right.
be through, I promise.
All right.
May I suggest that the commission, the full commission, meet with the full DDA board and quit sending notes back and forth from wherever they're coming from, either from Pat or to Bobby Barnes. I would like to sit in front of the whole board and have
Another conversation?
yes, have conversation about it, period, that we haven't had thus far.
Well, we've
And-
had one. It's
Well-
just that nothing has evolved other than what we asked for in that last meeting. We had a meeting prior to the letter that we got in August. That's what got the letter and the first payment. But we haven't had any, so I think he's absolutely right. It may be time for us to come together again, to have a meeting of the minds and just see where they are with, because the monies have been going through their hands and the buildings have been appraised. So it's just time for us to come together again as a community and see what I think that's a good idea. Attorney?
But we put Pat in a difficult position
Yeah,
from
we
an
do.
accounting standpoint. That's what his point is good accounting practices don't necessarily mesh with what
Let's go.
we need to do in terms of dealing with the DDA, and also some of it, for lack of a better way of putting it, is accounting speak versus legal speak. What Pat is talking about is eminently reasonable.
Right.
But you know, when you use the term bad debt and you place it in certain categories, I'm not prepared, without looking at it a little more carefully, to say what the impact will be on the DDA, and also from the idea of treating it as a transfer to the DDA, what that does to our efforts to collect it as well. It just kind of caught me off guard, Pat. I apologize if I'd had a little more time this evening to think about it. But I understand exactly where you're coming from a gap standpoint. You know, it needs to be handled, and I have no real issue with how you want to handle it. I just don't know that the commission has really come to a resolution, because the DDA did say, we want to work with you. They wrote this letter. They said they would get the appraisals, come back to us, and work to repay the debt. And it's just sort of out of sight, out of mind, I think, a little bit.
Madam Chair, I want to remind us, or to make us aware, that if we're going to have a joint meeting to resolve a situation before the end of the year for the accounting purposes.
Wait a minute. Our year's
Right, it's
done,
already ended.
all right?
So
And we are in the process of preparing our comprehensive annual financial report.
That's what I'm talking about.
that's where we are.
And that board doesn't meet again until January. So if we're gonna try to meet with them, then it needs to be a call meeting sometime in December. Their next meeting is the first Tuesday in January.
And in order to accommodate you to that point, if you will entertain a motion to specifically include the $135,000 on the balance sheet and to instruct me, with the help of our financial consultant and our independent auditor, to disclose the necessary information in the note about the $135,000, then we can move on. And next year at this point in time, we will either have received some sort of partial payment or payment in full, or they will have made no payments at all, and then you can decide again next year what you're going to do with it. Okay? But I'm asking, if you're not going to not put it on the balance sheet, then please instruct me to put it on the balance sheet and give me the latitude to make the necessary note to disclose the facts and circumstances of why it's on the balance sheet.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
You have an exemplary record throughout the industry. If you put it this way on the balance sheet, will it in any way affect your record in terms of your CAFRA or the awards that the Utility Commission receives for excellent in accounting every year?
No.
Okay.
It won't. But there will have to be adequate disclosures so that an informed reader of the report will understand the facts and circumstances around the note on the balance sheet for the $135,000.
Commissioner?
Well, then, in that case, if it will not hurt us as far as our record goes of clean audits, if we can still have a clean audit, then that seems to me that that's what we need to do, and do what Bob suggested, and that is bring, and then I would think that if we did that, time is not as critical, because this is a really busy time for a lot of people. We could have another 2 or 3 weeks, but we certainly do need to have a call meeting, I think, with the DDA board, so that we can address this as soon as we can. But this would take the heat off of the accounting.
And again, in all fairness, we're having a very frank and good discussion. At this point in time, I do not know whether we would show it as $135,000 and make the necessary disclosure, or whether we would show it as $135,000 minus $135, net zero, and the necessary disclosure. That's a conversation that Paul Blick and Danielle George and I need to have as to what is gap. Okay.
From the legal standpoint too, we're looking at the attorney, and I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about the 2 proposals.
Well, I
for
think
the comments that he just made.
I think that
Because we have to look in terms of the future. We can solve the problem now, but what happens in the future?
well, again, as I pointed out earlier, some of this is accounting practices, and I'm trying to think it through as we discuss this. And the concern I have is showing a transfer to the DDA, and when in fact that there's no decision from this board to make that transfer. I would prefer that you consider showing it on the balance sheet and allowing Pat and also the auditors to make appropriate references to it to explain why it's shown on the balance sheet. Then that will certainly allow you to again address it next year. I think that's sort of in line with what we were talking about doing when we had our session where we all met in our retreat. I'm comfortable with that. I'm also comfortable with having a call meeting to address this with the Downtown Development Authority, understanding, of course, we're all under the same umbrella. You know, the city, the Utility Commission, and the Downtown Development Authority, and one paying one it's almost a circular transaction. But the reality is the Utility Commission has taken money out of its accounts to pay this loan off, and that either needs to ultimately be characterized as transfer to the city if it's not going to be collected, or to the DDA if it's not going to be collected. And I want an opportunity to look at both of those for a variety of reasons, versus just making a decision with it today. It's just me not fully understanding, and it may well be that I come back with Pat at some point and make a recommendation that you take a different course.
All right then.
So I would make a motion. My recommendation would be that you move to show it on the balance sheet with Pat making the appropriate notations on there, so that it's fully disclosed, whatever notations he believes are appropriate.
Commissioner Johnson, you have another question?
That
That satisfies, okay. All right, any other discussion?
One quick question.
All right.
Your earlier comment, your first comment about this was to not put it on the balance sheet.
That's correct.
Can you tell me again in 2 sentences the difference in the two?
2 sentences.
Why?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand.
Well,
what you're
it sounds
asking.
like we're fixing to vote on something that you recommended we not do.
And I'm looking for compromise.
Okay,
Okay.
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 Does that answer your question?
It does,
Okay.
it does. And I'll put that in the form of a motion, Madam Chairman, if I'm in order,
What are we putting in the motion?
to put it on the
On the ballot.
Pat, put it on the
On the
balance sheet.
balance sheet.
And make
with
the
necessary
appropriate-
Make the appropriate notations.
I second.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded that our accountant, Patrick McFall, will put the note on the ballot sheet with the appropriate notations.
And the financial statements.
And the financial statements. I have a motion on the floor. What is your pleasure? Or has-
Mayor, second.
Now, Barbara Williams.
I think it's been seconded,
Yeah.
yes.
That's what I said.
Yeah, it's been seconded, okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by show of hands. All right. The motion carries unanimously.
And I commend Pat for getting Paul Glitch to say anything other than "it depends."
We have a very good working relationship with
Yes.
Mr. Glitch.
Madam Chairman,
Okay,
can we do something that won't let the joint meeting between the two bodies fall through the cracks? I don't know what that needs to be, but
I think we put that in the hands of our general manager and our finance manager to get that in order as soon as possible, allowing and considering the holiday season for the DDA, since we've taken the pressure off of the book. Do you think that would be unfair, or do we need to try to do it before the Christmas
You have until the end of the next fiscal year
to work it out?
to work it out.
Very
Madam Chair,
good.
I suggest after the holidays.
After the holidays,
I'll-
okay.
I'll sure, we'll
I
sure
think
take
we'll all
care of that.
agree. Would that be all right? Okay.
And maybe before their first,
Before their first meeting, their first
Right.
board meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And when is their first board meeting? When is that
first
board
Tuesday
meeting?
night, they meet the first Tuesday nights. If that's not January the 1st or the 2nd, I don't have my calendar with me. Usually they tend to, if that's coming up to write a holiday, then they'll change it over to that next time.
The first Tuesday is January the 6th.
Yeah, so they probably will be on schedule then.
So
See what I can do.
early in the new year,
Mhm.
okay?
Yes, ma'am. I'll get
Monday
working on
either
it.
the Friday the 2nd or Monday the 5th.
Get working on it first thing in the morning.
That's our work session.
When is your work?
Tuesday, 2 to 6 is our work session in that morning.
So maybe, perhaps we could do it Monday the 5th?
Sounds good.
Let's look at Monday the 5th to allow those who would be away for the,
That works better for me than Tuesday. I'll be in court on Tuesday.
let's look at Monday the 5th. We'll just go ahead and ask if we can work it out at some point on Monday the 5th. And let's try to work that as thoroughly as we possibly can, because we want to still consider the fact that we are a community, but we are not an abusive community, one to the other, and we'll work it out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. We don't have anything else on our agenda. Commissioner Dankel has asked for space on the agenda. So if it's okay with the board, we'll go ahead and give our time at this time to Commissioner Dankel.
I really had this for our work session last week, but when, as a commission item, but when the time ran out, we didn't get to it. In fact, we didn't get to several things that we wanted to get to. Dan Thompson sent all of us a memo dated December the 3rd concerning the project that we've been working on more than a year for a renovation of the utility office. And he suggested several things here in this memo that need to be done before we can have the information that we would need to derail the plans that we have and head in another direction. At this point, and you were hoping to have this done before January, so that we could start to decide, well, do we derail the whole thing and head in another direction? This sounds costly to me, and I think that we've probably already spent a lot of money on the plans that we had, our original plans, can you tell me how much we've already spent? on,
$92,000.
Okay, $92,000 is a lot of money. I would be hesitant to agree to spending any more money. I mean, $92,000 would go a long way to pay for that bucket truck. I mean, when you think about that, that's a lot of money. And I think that just like us getting together with the DDA, it's time for us to get together with the city and say, okay, if we don't complete the plans that we've already spent over $90,000 on, that are shovel ready, I think we were supposed to start, weren't we, in January or February?
It's getting very close, yes, ma'am.
As far as letting bids or putting out bid proposals or invitations to bid on things. I think that we need to look at that, right, almost in an emergency way, and decide, do we go off and spend more money on something else without really knowing for sure what is going on between the city and the utility commission? And I would like to suggest that we have a sit down with the mayor and with city council and see exactly what the request of the city is, and how much money the city has to put into their part of the of whatever it is that you would have in mind. I think that whatever it is, we just need to know. It's sort of like with the DDA. We need to know. We don't need to hold up a project that's been hanging around here for more than a year. Not that nothing has been done. I know things have been done, and it takes a long time to, get this machine up and going. But that's my request, is that we have some kind of emergency meeting.
All right, we thank you for that input regarding the renovation and the outlook on the possibility of the new construction with the city. And we will take your recommendation on the advisement, and as soon as we can pull that meeting together, we'll get back with you. Is that good? Mayor, you have the request?
Next week would be a good time, because that is the time for work session for council. It's time for the council meeting and all of that.
What are your dates on those?
Ma'am?
What are your dates?
The 16th is our work session, and the 18th is our public meeting. So
We need
if
to
you wanna
rally. We need to rally together and see if we can.
see
So we
if-
really need to meet before the work session.
Right,
Mhm.
if we could.
All right, we'll ask our general manager to
See if we
coordinate
can work
that,
up
see if we
something,
can work up
maybe
something,
Monday.
maybe Monday of next week.
We'll get to working on that first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That was the 15th.
Right.
And we have
Just
a
finish
special-
it.
Okay.
We don't think it
Is
will,
that-
we don't think
I think
it
it
will
works
distress
for me.
it, distress any of us, as long as we don't keep our attorney on a Tuesday. You want to be free on a
I think
Tuesday.
15th will be fine.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll look at that,
Is that
we'll
okay
work
with
it
you?
out. Is it okay with you?
Yes. I will have turned in my grades by that time.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Dankel. All right, is there anything else that needs to come to the board tonight?
Yes, it's the holiday season, and Fort Valley looks wonderful. I just want to let everybody know, it just looks great. When we drove in, I was very, very pleased. It looks great, and, the utility commission did a great job working with the city and the community on the
It was a family effort between the utility commission, public work, and some private citizens.
And now I have to ride home with my bride, who is on me about getting the Christmas tree up.
I want to welcome
That's the
our
positive
friend in
part.
the and from the community in our audience and give you an opportunity to speak to us if you wish.
I don't have anything tonight.
Thank you so much for
But
coming.
probably in January.
All right, thank you so much
I'm
for
in my
coming.
way tonight,
All
so
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you. We want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a
Thank
happy
you.
holiday
Thank you.
season as well.
Can I make a quick announcement? We kicked the season off last Thursday with our community Christmas party, which was a wonderful event involving everybody. Well, actually, we kicked it off the week before that, coming up to Thanksgiving by turning the lights on and everything and having a ceremony to bless the lights. And then we had our Christmas parade on Saturday. And so the community downtown has been full with not a parking place left ever since Thursday night and day. And that makes this one mayor very excited because that's bringing Fort Valley alive to me. That's the way I see life in the valley. I do want to make mention again, and the Utility Commission already has something planned for the 19th at noon for their employees, and we have something planned for 10 o'clock for our employees that we're doing here with the city. And we are combining those efforts too, again, like family. And that term unity in the community, that's what I'm seeing happen with the Utility Commission as well as the City Council, and we want to keep that momentum going.
Amen.
Okay. We take this opportunity again to thank each of you for serving this year. I've enjoyed working with you at this session each year, and I want to wish each of you individually and collectively a very happy holiday season and the merriest of Christmases. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership.
All right.